Hey, it's Ed here with another edition of Behind the Mask. This is where we try to get a little bit more personal, a little deeper into some of the clinicians that are leading the healthcare transformation that's taking place. And in this episode, we have my friend, Dr. Minal Shah. Minal, welcome to Behind the Mask.
Thank you, Ed. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I always think people are brave because, we get a little bit more personal than we do professional on this particular uh, playlist, if you will. So it's a little bit more challenging in some ways for some people, but I think it's really eye-opening for everyone just to understand that the persons behind the mask are real people, just like everyone else. So thank you for your bravery and your willingness to be here. We really center around three questions, and that's who are you, and then how did you get here, and sort of where are you going? And so, at what age did you realize, that you were a leader?
I think my parents would say that I realized that pretty early on. I'm what they used to describe as a bossy kid. I would describe it as a kid with leadership potential, but apparently I was pretty challenging to parent because I would frequently ask them, well, why can't we do this better? Well, why can't we do it this
Right.
way? So I think it was, somewhat ingrained in me.
Was there anything that your parents forced you to do that at the time you were like doing an eye roll, but in hindsight now as an adult and a parent yourself, you're like, I'm kind of glad they made me do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my parents, one thing I think that they did really well is they really forced me to give maximum effort, even for things that I did not enjoy or I was not naturally good at. And that made a huge impact on me. I think it really taught me that you need to follow through on your commitments and to be open to the idea of growing in your skill set.
Yeah. And what was the biggest reason? What was the catalyst for you to choose healthcare and become a physician?
I would say I actually got interested in medicine at a very young age. So I was in high school when I started to develop this interest, and I actually attended a medical academy where I got the opportunity to shadow within the Texas Medical Center. So for me, it really started with a deep fascination about how the human body works. And that just grew and grew with the exposure that I had in high school. Ended up applying for a program where I actually applied for medical school and college at the same time. And I really credit that school for providing the opportunity for me to really witness what healthcare was like. Actual healthcare, not how it's portrayed in television and not how you might experience it as a volunteer or a candy striper.
So, what's one thing that you can share with us that your coworkers don't know about you?
Something my coworkers would not expect about me is that I actually really enjoy boxing. It's my favorite form of exercise. So my husband, who was former active duty Navy, he does mixed martial arts and jujitsu. So he taught me, and I just love it. I think it is the best way to kind of get out of your mind and really connect with your body.
I love that. That's great. I didn't know that about you either. That's really cool. I'll have to learn more about that sometime. It sounds super interesting. What is your defining moment? Is there a catalyst, something that happened in your life, whether as a youngster or a little bit older, a sort of a catalyst that reinforced your trajectory or changed your destiny?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think I mentioned before that I got into healthcare at a very young age. I loved clinical medicine and I still do. And I always thought that I would be practicing clinical medicine for the rest of my life. But in 2021, I attended the Stanford AI and Healthcare Conference. And to me, it was really, it was a life-changing event. It really showed me the potential for how this new emerging technology would transform healthcare. And prior to that, I had no health technology experience other than being a user, but I knew healthcare. I had practiced all across the nation, and I knew I could learn the technology piece and bring my healthcare expertise to it. So I made a fairly abrupt career transition. I'm still a practicing hospitalist, but I really went out there and gained the skills and experience I needed to focus on emerging technologies in healthcare. So big change from what
Yeah,
I was expecting to do when I was young.
that's very cool. What about, you mentioned you're a practicing clinician, and not that the answer to this question is directly related, but what's the last time you cried?
I just put my last kid in daycare. So my daughter's 15 months old. I've got two, 4-year-old and 15-month-old. And so starting to pack up the baby things, I definitely started crying. It's like the end of an era for us, really. This is our last kid. I think really just acknowledging how much she's grown in the last 15 months was was overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. What was something in life you really wanted but didn't ever get?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I was born and raised in Houston, and I did all of my medical training in Houston. And when I was matching for residency, I really, really wanted to move to another place. So I had actually ranked a different program as my number one, and I didn't get it. So for those folks that don't know what the physician match program is like, you interview all across the nation and you rank your choices and the programs rank their choices and rhythm decides. We all find out on the same day where we're going to be for training for the next few years of our life. So I was very disappointed at the time. I think a part of me really wanted to experience a new city and get in, a new setting. But I actually met my husband that year. My husband's active duty Navy, and I got my wish. I practiced all across the nation. So I was able to get that experience, but I also was able to do my residency training in my home program, which was the absolute best place for me to train. I don't have any regrets. And in many ways, that hospital is like home to me. And it was really wonderful to be there during residency. So for those folks who, may be disappointed on match day, just know that there are great things ahead of you and, everything is working in your favor and you'll get the opportunities that you want in life.
Yeah. And you might meet your future spouse.
Right? Exactly.
Tell us about a time that someone tried to hold you back from achieving something. Again, it could have been in your youth or whenever. And how did you respond?
Yeah. Yeah. So, one situation that comes to mind when I was a chief resident at Baylor, I worked with one individual who was quite set in their ways. So, none of us really get into healthcare leadership to keep everything exactly the same. We all want to make things better. We all have a ton of ideas, and it's really challenging when you bring that energy and you're just kind of shut down immediately. And that's what happened time and time again when I worked with this one individual. And so I had two options at that point. I could kind of buckle down and continue to be in conflict with this individual, or I could figure out how to connect with them and how to create trust, and then have the possibility of moving some of my ideas and my projects along. So that's what I did. I didn't focus on pushing anything. I just focused on building a relationship with that individual, and it worked really, really well. So I would just say that if somebody's trying to hold you back, number one, question what your assumptions are, assume positive intent, or find out what their intent is. Be open and willing to have those conversations. And number two, really focus on building relationships because your ability to execute a project is highly dependent on your ability to maintain those relationships. And you will get much further in life if you work with people instead of trying to constantly work against them.
Yeah, sage advice. Tell me about the last time you either sent a thank you card or received one.
Well, and I'm a millennial, so we don't really write letters anymore. But I do strongly believe in being generous with thank yous. And I think we don't hear thank yous enough. So, one situation that comes to mind happened a few months ago where I took over a patient's care, and it was a patient who had come in with an infected joint. And it was a very subtle presentation. And I thought the ER doctor did such an excellent job of really leaning into his intuition, figuring out what was going on, and getting that patient the immediate care that he needed. So I sent him a text message and I said, "Hey, Michael, I just want to say that, you picked up things that many other doctors would have missed. Like, thank you so much for taking such great care of this patient." And he immediately picked up the phone and called me and just said, "I want to let you know how much this means to me. Like, as an ER doctor, I don't get told often what I do well. I always get told what I did wrong." And so that really stuck with me and reinforced how important it is to say thank you to those around us, especially when they're doing what many would consider to be a thankless job, to really go out of the way to connect with your colleagues in that way.
I love it. Was there something that you ever quit and then later regretted it?
A great question. My parents put me in Indian classical dance classes, and I'll tell you, I'm probably the only Indian woman who is a terrible dancer. I hated it, They made me do it for many years, and I finally won the battle with them and told them I don't want to do this anymore. It's funny, now I've got a 4-year-old kid and I'm trying to get her to take Indian classical dancing lessons because of course it ties you to your culture, and it's really important that we maintain that. So yeah, I ended up quitting maybe 6 months before our graduation, so to speak. So, in
Yeah.
that specific type of dance called Bharatanatyam, you graduate and you perform in front of a large group of people. And I wish I had taken myself to that, graduation point. I think it would have been a great accomplishment for me and really would have helped kind of solidify my connection to my culture.
Yeah, I understand. I think a lot of people listening can and watching can relate to something like that. Chatting to the next generation. So now sort of looking forward. What's one thing that you would say to them to relish in the journey? You know how we're sort of rushed, right? Trying to get through medical school, trying to get through residency. We're always rushed.
Yeah.
But now that you have a few years of experience looking back, what would you tell that young person like to relish in that whole time that otherwise we would have rushed?
Yeah, I think it's so key to build a strong relationship with yourself and cultivate happiness where you are. So, what you often hear from trainees is life's going to get better when I'm in residency. Life's going to get better when I'm in attending. Life's going to get better when I get a promotion. And there's sort of this, continual hunt for what you can get out of the next step. But I think that as you move through the system, you realize that actually being an attending is much harder than being a resident. Actually, being a resident is much harder than being a medical student. So, really try to focus on cultivating happiness where you are. And all of us can find happiness where we are. We just have to be intentional about it. But focus on now because, if you don't cultivate that skill now, you definitely won't be happy as you progress through your career.
Yeah. What about challenges and goals that you're undertaking on a personal side? So kind of end with this question. Like, so we talked a little bit about work and some of the great things we're doing, and we'll link you. You've also been on the Ed Talks, and we'll link the Ed Talks to this episode as well, so people can find out more on the professional side. But are there personal goals that you're undertaking, some challenges in the next couple of years?
Yes, well, we talked about this before, but one of my big personal goals is to do a 14er in Colorado. So, for those of you that don't know, Colorado has a number of mountains that are 14,000 feet high. In fact, there's one kind of in my backyard here in Colorado Springs. And so it's sort of a cultural thing here in Colorado to be able to do a 14er. So that's one of my big goals. Believe it or not, Ed, I still haven't even done the Manitou Incline, which is,
Wow.
yeah, another great hike here in Colorado where you're kind of hiking straight up, but the views are incredible. So I have tasked myself with doing those two things, before I leave the state of Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and we're going to do those together. I'm convinced in the summer of 2025. I'm going to be out there. We're going to climb some mountains. I know that we will.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for being part of Behind the Mask and for being vulnerable.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I think it's important that we create these genuine connections, and vulnerability is a big part of creating a genuine connection. So it's been wonderful chatting with you.